Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Predictable Sales in Uncertain Times webinar. I'm very excited, actually, because it's the first in our Secret Weapon Business Chats series that we're just launching now. And this is going to be a monthly series that we carry on, talking about various topics related to growing small companies through a turbulent 2020 and beyond. I think we could all use a secret weapon right now, and so hopefully we'll be able to give those to you. Today we're going to be talking about sales predictability. As I sometimes have been known to say, sales fixes everything. So let's talk about that and how we can make sales something that we can count on in the future of our companies. I didn't update the speaker slide, so I'll skip over that one. But I wanted to introduce Rob Malec. He's our friend who I've known for, I guess it's a couple of years now, Rob. And Rob has been a sales leader in various organizations and now works independently as a fractional VP of sales or head of sales for various companies. Rob, do you want to say a few words and introduce yourself?
Absolutely, yeah. So I have been an independent consultant now for 20 years. And what I do is to help my clients to build a revenue generation engine inside of their business, and one that creates revenue reliably and predictably. And so there's many things that I do to bring that about. But as you mentioned, at the highest level as a fractional vice president sales. So there's lots of businesses out there that need vice president level sales experience, been there, done that experience and expertise, but they can't necessarily afford to hire that person. So I perform those functions on a fractional basis. So not unlike the fractional CFO, it's the same idea on the sales side of life. And I work across, it's been 22 industries over the 20 years. I've seen a whole bunch of stuff and a lot of things that have worked and gone really well, and a lot of things that sadly have tanked. And so I bring all that experience to bear when I work with my clients.
So good. Thank you for the intro, and thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Some of you might know me. I should introduce myself too. So I'll be the host for today, and I'm the founder of Entreflow Consulting Group. We're a boutique consulting firm that works with small and innovative companies that are growing quickly. And we help with back office functions like CFO services, accounting, finance, HR, and that sort of thing. So one of the things that we are often asked about is about how to forecast sales, how to plan the future, and one really important line is the top line, the revenue growth. And so we'll talk a little bit about that today. But before we do, I should acknowledge Colin, who's joined us on the line. Hi, Colin.
Hey, Ian. How you doing? Rob, good to see you.
Yeah, it's nice to have you back. So for those of you who don't know, Colin joined us every week on our quarantine chats or previous webinar series as the co-host for those things, and he's been kind enough to join us again on this webinar, Secret Weapon Chats. So do you want to say hi, Colin, and a little bit about what you do?
Sure, I will. It's very kind of you to say that I co-host. I would actually just watch. I watch you lead, and I just try to keep up, and I just nod a lot and agree. So that's very generous of you to actually say I was actually doing that much work, but you were doing, yourself and Helena were doing all the heavy lifting. So those of you who do not know me, my name is Colin Weston. I am the community leader for Startup Vancouver, which is one of over 40 chapters of community chapters across Canada of Startup Canada. And our why and our mission, our purpose is to support the 3.5 million entrepreneurs across the country. And that's what we do through our own events, through fantastic events like this that Entreflow is doing with the reboot here with Secret Weapon Chats. I love the name, by the way. And just a quick one today. Afterwards, And for a couple of days, I think tomorrow also, we are part of Vancouver Startup Week. Confusing, no different than Startup Vancouver, but we definitely collaborate. And our weekly live stream show, What Keeps You Up at Night, will be part of Vancouver Startup Week that starts at 12:30. So if you're signed up for free with Vancouver Startup Week, you can jump on and join us there, where we have 3 more exciting guests. We've changed the format now to 1 hour once a week rather than half an hour twice a week. So yeah, really happy to be back here. I probably do need to jump off before the top of the hour here, Ian, but yes, I will co-host, as I always do, with you here. So thanks for having me again. I appreciate it. And Rob, good to see you, as I said.
Sounds good. All right, well, the agenda's up on the screen, and it should be no surprise for those of you who visited the event page before signing up. This is what we're going to talk about today. We really want revenue to be predictable and scalable, and have the team that's responsible for generating revenue to be able to sort of manage them themselves. So that the founders can really rely on that business function, which will help the organization scale. So we're going to talk through all those things with Rob, and then I'm going to take on a little bit of a technical dive into some forecasting stuff around sales. Because there's commonly questions that our CFO and finance team get about how to think about sales forecasting and modeling. So I've got a little bit of a tool that I want to share with you, and I'll give you the link to after we're done. But let's jump into it. Before we do, I would love this to be interactive, right? So if you have questions as we go, make sure and type them into the chat, and when you do, make sure and change the setting on the chat to all panelists and attendees, so that everyone can see what your chat is, and you can chat back and forth. And as you're on the line right now, why not go ahead and give it a try and just say hello and where you're from, and maybe if there's a key thing that you want to get out of this conversation, then mention that. You can also raise your hand. You can also pose a question, and we might open up the mic and allow you to chat through, and sometimes that's a good conversation there. So that hopefully this is interactive, but I'll be asking Rob some questions, and we'll sort of banter and jump in if there's something that you want to ask in particular. So the first topic is about a predictable sales engine. So I'm actually going to stop sharing because we don't have lots of content on the slides, and I really want this to be us chatting front and center. So let's turn it over to Rob, and we'll just say my first question to kick things off for you, Rob, is let's diagnose this issue. Why is sales unpredictable for many organizations? What are some of those causes that make sales unpredictable?
Right. Sales predictability comes from several different places. In the small business, one of the first areas is when the owner-founder is the rainmaker. And the owner-founder has rainmaking and sales duties, and then accounting duties, and then production duties, and HR duties. And so when you tackle any task on a part-time basis, it doesn't get your full attention. It's tough to create momentum, break inertia, create momentum, and maintain that momentum when you have many different tasks that you have to focus on. So that's one of the first reasons you don't get any regular tempo, and so it's hard to produce results time-wise in a reliable way. Another cause is when the owner or founder is that person and sales isn't their first love. And maybe they'll admittedly say, it's not my first love, I'm not good at it, let alone not liking to do it. And so you're tackling a task on a somewhat random basis that you're not confident at. And so the results will show that over time. If you're a small business owner and you do have sales staff, then unpredictability comes from not having process, nothing that's repeatable. You might have 2 or 3 people, but they are selling in their own way, in their own manner. If they were producing a physical product in the back shop in their own way, in their own manner, you'd look at that and say, that's crazy. We can't predict what we need to order. We don't have our process steps, inventory. It's tough to understand where our margin's going to be at the end of this. And so sales is not unlike producing a physical product, where you need some defined process steps and then a methodology to execute on each of those steps. And sometimes you have a combination of all those things going on, and therefore sales becomes virtually impossible to predict. It's not reliable. You'll have huge peaks, which are great, but then terrible valleys, which are, really, really hard to navigate through, and you're not sleeping at night, that sort of thing. And so for the business owner to look at how can I corral this and turn it into basically a process, that's the first step towards predictability.
Very cool. If I may, I'll add what might be the icing on the cake there. As from my perspective, as sales organizations grow, there's also the people element. So, and there's a process to be followed around hiring and how you select your sales reps. So you may have a process that's working, but not have the right methodology or the right checks and balances on hiring. So introducing some unpredictability into the team itself as the team grows, that can make it hard. You have expectations about a new hire coming on, following the process, executing what you've laid out. But if you're not doing the hiring correctly, then you're going to set yourself up for some surprises on who you bring onto the team. One other thing I might add is I think from the sort of CFO hat on is the sales manager's ability to predict, right? So there's there's a, hey, here's the deals that we have in the pipeline. We're following the process, and I think once you say that yes, we're going to have these deals closed, but then they don't close that month, or they close the next month or something, that's something where I think many sales organizations struggle to really dial in how to get a reliable prediction on the pipeline. And I don't quite know how to solve that. And maybe Rob, you have some ideas on how do you sort of guess that forecasted close date on that deal?
Right. Well, what we want to do is take the guesswork out of it. And so inside I'll say the sales process, which are the steps one would follow to move an opportunity through to closure, there are some very well-defined landmarks that you need to cross as you help your buyer to make a decision, yes or no, to go with you. And if those aren't well-defined, then you may talk with a salesperson, and many salespeople are very optimistic people. I think that's one of the traits that you need to have. And they will talk a lot about why the buyer loves us, why we're the next greatest thing, and that they're going to say yes to us. But unless you can sort of rip into the detail of the buyer's decision-making steps and understand, are they at step 2 or step 8 in a very clearly defined way, then you're unable to predict when a sale will close. Mm-hmm. And so we have the buyer's decision-making steps, and then we have the actions that the seller must take to help them along that path. And it is a sales by helping approach. And so that's the second thing we need to know as well. The buyer is on step 2 or 8 of their decision-making process, and we are on step 2 or 8 of our sales process. Are those things in sync? If they're not, then there will be variability, and you can't necessarily predict when a sale will close. And so in order to grapple with that, I've created something. It's a deal scoring method whereby there's 15 bits of information a seller needs to know in order to build a solid foundation for a buyer to say yes, and to understand if that deal is strong enough to make it all the way through. If you measure, and as a seller, you only know 5 of those 15 things, you can't really say, well, I think this is going to close in the next 30 days. There's too much ground left to be covered.
Mm-hmm.
And similarly with the seller's actions, if the seller in your process has only completed 2 of the 10 steps, you can't say it's going to close in the next 30 days. And so, one, having the scoring mechanisms in place that are, going to work for your business, and 2, working collaboratively with your salesperson to say, well, where is the buyer? Where are we as a seller in this process? Okay, well, given the magnitude of this decision, there's 2 zeros at the end of it or 7 zeros at the end of it. Here's how far away we are from closure. And that's the way we take something from being an organic, let's chat about it thing into a quantified, measurable, repeatable process. And with the notion of scaling, if you have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 salespeople following this methodology, you'll get far more accuracy in the predictability of your pipeline and whether or not things are going to close in 30, 60, or 90 days. You should get to a point where I would say with 75% accuracy, you can determine if a deal will close in 30, 60, or 90 days. There's always that 25% variability where the buyers don't always give full disclosure. There's things going on inside of their business or their market that might impact your deal. But the 75% should be measurable. We've done this, they've said this, they've committed to these things, we provided these things. Here is exactly where we are in the process.
Very good. So having talked about why sales is unpredictable, maybe we can dig in a little further on some fixes. I mean, you mentioned the deal scoring method and process.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how to build that predictable revenue engine.
Right. So the how-to begins with mapping out of your sale, which is simply to say, think through your last 3 deals that you closed or your sales team closed. And I'll say to either do this as an independent exercise if you're the rainmaker or if you have a sales team, to gather the team together and map out, well, what path did this sale take from first introduction through to closure? What did the buyer ask for? What did we have to provide in order to help them through the decision-making process? In what order did they make their decision, which is to say, was someone really doing the shopping and they had to bring in other decision makers who had the authority to, in fact, sign off on the spend? When in the process did that happen? What did we need to bring to bear by way of proof sources for credibility or sampling or demonstrations if we have a technical product? Where in the process did that happen? And when you can lay all that out, and this is a simple whiteboarding or an electronic whiteboarding exercise, you'll get some insight into, okay, well, here are the milestones of our sale. That's basically your sales process map. And you can put sales funnel stages to that. So you'll know clearly when a deal moves from one stage into the next. So that will help you to chart forward momentum or a sales process that's stuck. Inside of that, the next thing to map would be, well, what is it we need to provide our buyers to help them make decisions? And if you need to provide things in a different way or a more robust way, the demo is a good example where we might have demoed our product one way, less effective than if we demo it the next way. What's the optimum way to do that? When we engage buyers early on, what's the optimum way for us to speak with them? Specifically, what questions do we need to ask up front to understand what they're doing today, the pain points they're having, and their desired improved future state? Mm-hmm. And by having your sales process steps, and then by having things like a simple list of questions that you need to ask, a simple list of here's the bits of information that we need to know about this buyer and their situation to help them solve the pain points, move them towards their desired improved future state. By inventorying those things, you can simply go by checking the boxes and say, well, for the next sale we have coming up, when they're in this step, we'll make sure we do these 2 things, 5 things, 7 things. When they move to the next step, here's the next things we have to do. And then that will give you your flow. That will give you the process. That's your recipe. And then you can simply follow the recipe. So that's the first step. in solving that problem. There's some deeper steps we go to next.
Sure, sounds good. Maybe let's talk about an example. And I think the sales process and funnel stages will be slightly different for each individual company. You know, if you're a software company, certainly there's usually a demo or trial period involved. If it's physical goods, you know, you might have you might have a site visit or something like that. So it's going to be slightly different. But maybe we can outline for the crew here just like an example, so that we can lay that out, and then we can dig into one of those. I'll throw one out there, and then you know, let me know if you want to modify. But from my experience, it's fairly common that the initial stage of the sales process is an introductory call or meeting, right? In which you are attempting to identify what the needs are, and you know, generally, do they have some budget, and are you talking to the right people, and you know, are they going to make a decision sometime soon? And then from there, it might proceed into a deeper discovery meeting or a demo or something like that, and ultimately, you're presenting a solution or a proposal and talking through objections, etc. So maybe we can use that kind of example to then dig in. Did I miss anything there, Rob? Or is that sort of like a general good sort of general example flow?
That's a good example flow. In general terms, the sales funnel stages I work with are, well, we have the lead development funnel, which is separate from the sales funnel. I'll just talk about the sales funnel, which is typically, I call it first pass diagnosis of needs, deep dive diagnosis of needs, then solution, then negotiation, and finally agreement. Okay. And those classic sales funnel stages will get anybody, regardless if it's a product or service you're selling, where you want to go. Inside those, the first pass diagnosis is really just to see, is this a customer that we can help? Do they have pain points of the type that we can solve for? And yes, you know, the budget piece is about commitment. Are they committed to moving forward? Do they have a vision of the desired improved future state that they would like? So if they have needs that you can help with, and they have a clear vision of where they want to go, and yes, they're committed to moving forward, which is to say budget and access to decision makers, then that will be your final, well, it's a qualification and somewhat of a disqualification. If they don't have some of those pieces, they're probably not ready to buy, and there's someone you should stay engaged with. Maybe it's a nurture type scenario, but you wouldn't run them all the way through the sales process. If there's, I call this, it's either green light, yellow light, or red light. If there's some yellow lights or red lights and you go, you know what, this is probably not going to go anywhere, then you wouldn't invest sales time and resources into that. Inside of deep dive diagnosis that's the full line of questions relative to where, of course, you can help them. How are they doing? What they're doing today? What tools, systems, processes are they using? Specifically, where are they stuck? Where's the pain? From there, what's their desired improved future state? Well, obviously, they want to get the pain points resolved. But if we look at ourselves as business people helping other business people to succeed, then how are these pain points affecting them as a business, or around profit and loss, or hurting their ability to service their customers? And so what's their vision for an improved customer experience or improved profitability or the like, if that's relevant to us? Into solution is where we will do our demonstration. The demonstration should be tailored to that buyer's needs. There's some great books on how to demonstrate, one called Demonstrating to Win. Whether it's a software tech product or even if it's a physical product, we want to be able to say, here's what you told me where you're stuck. Here's one feature of this thing we have that will help you get unstuck. You told me there's another place where you're really stuck. Here's a few other features that will help you get unstuck. And finally, here's where you want to go in the big picture. Here's how we can help you to get there. And when we get into negotiation, that's typically where the proposal is presented, if you will. We will have talked pricing earlier. But inside of negotiation, we really want to be clear that by resolving pains and going towards the gains, which is desired improved future state, what's the value for the business or the value for the buyer? Are we helping them to make money or to save money, save time, make their life easier, or help them live the dream of an overall improved situation? We need to connect what their investment with us will bring them by way of value. There should be a return on that investment. And if we don't do that, we are simply a cost. We're a price, we're a fee. If we can do that, now we're an investment in something greater. And that really paves the way for a yes, more so than us being seen as an expense. And so we work our way through negotiation. Finally, agreement is we have everything dotted and crossed, we have the pricing agreed to, we have our implementation schedule set, and we're all set to go.
Very good. I love that you talk about disqualification up at the front. You know, it is some might say that this is the salesperson's main job, is to disqualify people who aren't a fit for. You're going to waste time on them in the sales process, introduce more variability or unpredictability, and ultimately people who are not qualified and become clients often end up being the painful clients to work with that ultimately you end up needing to fire. It's a really important point, and I think is one of the keys to having a predictable sales pipeline, because you really do the homework up front of figuring out what those value points could be, and is there going to be a case, and are they going to make decisions, and how are they going to make decisions, and let's not be afraid to let them sit in that stage for a while, right? Do another meeting if you need to, I think, to really qualify people through to the next stages. Love that point. And also really love the point on the use case, the gains that they're going to get, and is it a really good business case for them? It needs to create value, right? If I've seen proposals go out where we didn't understand that, right? We said, yeah, okay, we know how much it's gonna take, or we know how much it's this scope of work will be, or we know how much this product cost will be. Here's the proposal, but we didn't really understand what the business case is for the client properly, and then wonder why the client isn't making a decision or why they're not getting back to us, right? Being able to, I think, pick on those things is really good points there. Anyway, those are the things that I picked out. So thank you for sharing those things. It's really, really great, Rob. I think the next thing to talk about is scaling. So scaling those up. We had a question on the line is, do we have those pipeline stages documented somewhere? Yes, I think we do. And so why don't we agree to put up the simple list on the event page after the fact. How about that, Rob? Yeah? Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We'll do that. Thanks, Dave. So let's talk about scaling. So assuming we've got a predictable process and we're following all the steps, how do we scale up?
So scaling up involves CRM. Even as short as 5 years ago, not everyone had CRM, and it was somewhat new, somewhat novel. Now, if you don't have CRM, you're selling with 1.5 hands tied behind your back. You really need one. You can't scale without one. There's good ones that are free, that are easy to use, and from a user perspective, you can easily modify to your own unique needs. And so there's such a great upside. There's no excuse to not use one. And having your sales process mapped out allows you to reflect it into the CRM, because every CRM has a sales funnel in there, and you just give it the names. And then inside the CRM sales funnels, you can put in the steps people need to follow to move through those stages. You can put, if you have a deal scoring type of tool, you can embed that in the CRM. And as the challenge with scaling is teaching the new salespeople to sell. If you set up your CRM this way, where you have your funnel stages in there, you have mouse overs that explain how to move deals from one stage to the next, if you have links to training videos on how to use the CRM, if you have a scoring system for leads and for deals, and again, you use mouse overs to say, check this box if this thing has been satisfied, what you're creating is a place for salespeople to come in and learn very quickly and readily how to sell in the way that's successful at your company. What you're eliminating is salespeople getting stuck and doing things their own way because they're left to their own devices. What you're allowing yourself is a repository of information so you can create reporting and help get insight into the activities of that salesperson. So the scaling piece is first around mapping your process. Secondly, putting it into CRM. Thirdly, putting it into CRM in such a way the CRM becomes a teaching tool in and of itself. And the last piece is around hiring. You mentioned hiring earlier. That's probably the number one challenge that companies I deal with have. I'm often brought in after they've had one or two unsuccessful sales hires. And the challenge inside hiring salespeople is if they're decent salespeople, they will sell you on themselves. And the question that doesn't get answered sufficiently is what was sufficient to make them successful in their previous sales role going to be sufficient to make them successful in our sales role, in our company, in our market, in our industry, with all those nuances. And so the salesperson comes in with a track record of success, but it was in a different kind of industry, or maybe it's similar, but a different product, or maybe it's the company operated differently. And they come in, and then, so I guess the other trap is to, oh, thank goodness we've hired the salesperson, and you push off the sales function to them, and 6 months later, only then you realize, well, they haven't produced anything meaningful. And so if you don't have the CRM, then you can't track how they're doing along the way. So that's why we need the CRM piece. And if you don't have the sales process and methodology laid out for them, well, it makes sense they might not have success with us. But inside the hiring process, if you can't answer that key question, then you don't know if you have hired the person with the highest probability of success. So there is a hiring process. You do need sort of the pulse check. Do we like this person? Do I think they're a fit? That's sort of the first interview. Second interview is a behavioral interview designed to uncover their sales successes, and do they look like the kind of successes that will make them successful with us? We need to understand their traits and characteristics. Will they really fit within our company culture and our situation? The next step in there is a third interview, which is kind of a show me, which is maybe it's a presentation on what that salesperson would do in their first 30, 60, 90 days, in which we're less concerned with the content. It still has to be good, logical, makes sense. That helps us understand their business literacy. We're also concerned with their ability to speak in front of a group, their attention to detail, and presenting some sort of PowerPoint or the like to us. And also in there, I'm not shy to ask salespeople to say, well, can you take a first pass at selling something to us? This helps you understand what your buyers will experience. And then finally, the last interview would be about absolute fit and hiring and salary and the like. But this is a pretty rigorous process. It is 4 steps. If a salesperson wants to work for you, they'll happily go through those 4 steps. You'll experience what your buyers will experience before you hire this person. I will tell you that you'll say no to lots of candidates because they just won't be the right fit. But when you land on a person, you'll be more clear that they have the skills and abilities to be successful. You'll be more clear that they have a fit because you've taken the time to run through those 4 steps. So that's a very defined process that I run my clients through. And when you bring salespeople in, if you have the CRM and the sales process mapped out, if they are the locomotive, you've already laid the track for them. If you hire great salespeople without the process piece, you're putting your locomotive in a pit of sand and the wheels will spin, you'll go nowhere, and everyone's going to be frustrated. And so those 2 things, they really work together that way, the process piece and the hiring rigor piece.
I love that process. It kind of parallels. So many of you know that Entreflow does recruitment work as well for some of our clients. We've hired loads of salespeople on behalf of our clients, and follow some of those steps that Rob outlined. a really good thing to note is that past behavior is indicative of future behavior. So asking the kinds of questions that are situational, tell me a story. Tell me about a time when it was coming up on month end and you were below your number. What did you do? These kinds of questions can help you understand how somebody reacted in certain situations. I love the idea of the sell me something. It can, and you're looking for, do they listen really well? Do they really understand good questions? Sell me this pen. Are they identifying what the needs are? Right. That's those are really key points. And I think if I may add two things. So one would be, don't be shy to reach out to someone like Rob or an experienced sales professional in your network to do an outside interview if you don't have that senior person yet on your team. Because their chances are have hired dozens and dozens of people and can really dig in and ask some really, really solid questions of those people and put them on the spot, put them under pressure. And I think the other one might be to use, there's a number of tests out there that you can put people through, ask them to complete, and their psychometric test is the category for them, but it's basically asking them to answer based on their preferences and their way of thinking, and that can give you a sense or some kind of measures for things that you want to dig into. So the DISC profile is a famous one of those. There are specific ones that are tailored for salespeople as well. Don't be shy to use these. As many tools as you can employ into the hiring process, the better. Eventually, you'll get it to a point where it's pretty dialed in, and you can do it repeatedly. But reach out for help. I think that's the main thing. Cool. Anything else to say there on scaling, Rob?
Well, I think the last piece then is the manage the numbers and lead the people. Mm-hmm. In terms of scaling, if you don't keep your finger on the pulse of sales activities, because of course they precede results, then sale can be left to wander, the sales function. And so having your CRM set up with some reporting around number of sales calls per week, number of proposals issued per week, and the like, will help you to manage the numbers. And leading the people is as simple as your job, if you're going to be leading the sales team, is the remover of roadblocks. Mm-hmm. If you were to ask your salesperson, what roadblocks do you have to selling that I can remove? Which roadblocks are we putting up ourselves? Salespeople will say, it's so painful to get a client through the proposal process because I have to remake a proposal every time I issue one. Or they love us until they have to go through their credit checks, and I put that to accounting, and that takes 21 days, and the client loses interest. So what internal roadblocks can you remove to allow your salespeople to sell? And aside from that is compensation. My recommendation is if you need a hunting role, have a base that is competitive, but maybe even 10% below market, but keep your compensation on the commission side, uncapped, so that if a salesperson is achieving 100% of plan, they'll be above market rate in terms of their compensation. This will attract the right kind of person. If you have it's really a farming role, and you have a commission program like that, you won't attract the right candidate. So you really do need to adjust your compensation package based upon the sales need that you have. And in general terms, it's easier for a hunter to do some farming than a farmer to do some hunting. Mm-hmm. People who like account management and the like really dislike selling. Typically, they won't do it. They'll run away from it. They'll find other things to do. You can find some hunters that will take on an account management role. But inside the duality of a role that'll cause some sales friction, because the farming will often take precedence over the hunting. If you need a hunter, hire a pure hunter and set up your support system to allow that person to close deals and then hand the customer off, close deals and hand the customer off. Otherwise, they'll get mired into the farming, which of course you have to keep what you've sold, and then you'll stop losing momentum on your revenue growth.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we should clarify those terms, hunter and farmer.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're a good analogy, but just in case you on the line haven't heard them before, the hunter, you can think of going out and getting net new business, brand new business. So they're really out there and trying to make new connections and bring them into the fold. And the farmer analogy is more so particularly handling existing clients and looking to upsell or cross-sell or find new opportunities, certainly keep them, and build value into that account. Sometimes you start with a small sale in an enterprise account, and you grow the account, you grow and you sell into other departments, you grow the solution. And so that's sort of more of a farming mentality. And they're different kinds of people who are good at those things. The other thing that you talked about there was compensation. I think is a really important point. And I want to tie that back to the metrics that we've already talked about. So measuring performance, keeping a pulse on what's going on. So then the compensation should be tied to those measures as well. And, if it didn't happen in CRM, it didn't happen, right? Make sure that the sales reps can see how they're doing against goals. Make sure that when you're calculating their compensation, it's based on those metrics that they can see. So it's very visible to everybody. I think those are my two comments there that I'll add. Anything else? Any questions? I'll throw that out there if there's any questions. I had a tool that I wanted to share with you today. So we've got about 15 minutes left. I'm going to take a little bit of time to talk through this. And while I'm doing it, if you've got any questions, type them into the Q&A box or what have you. Looks like we've got 2 questions up there. I haven't looked at them yet. Okay, we had, what are some affordable or free CRM systems for scaling that you recommend? What are some key functions we should look for when choosing a CRM system? So let's take that one on. I can wholeheartedly recommend HubSpot. I've used it. We use it internally at Entreflow, and a number of our clients have used it. And seems to be a good tool, and you can scale forward from there. I've also used Pipedrive, and it's good for certain things, for the pipeline itself, but lacking on certain areas. There's close.io, which I've used a tiny bit, and that seems convenient for some people. These are the ones that I know of. Rob, can you comment on any other ones that you recommend for sort of growth stage companies?
Yeah, so if you're 0 to 10 users, and users would be salespeople, anybody associated with sales, I recommend Zoho highly. It's absolutely my go-to, and the reason why is the user interface is clean, it's very simple to use, and most importantly, is very simple to customize to your own needs. So if you want to add drop-down pick lists and the like and text boxes, you can do that really, really simply, and the user interface is great for that. It also has about 30 different plugins, project management software, a mailer like MailChimp. It has its own Zoom type function, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's really pliable and simple to use. So Zoho is my go-to. And I think Zoho is going to be great if you're going to be up to around 50 salespeople. If you're going to get really big, Salesforce is great, but it's a beast. It does a ton. But if you don't need all that functionality, then why pay for it? HubSpot is great if you think, I can do lots of marketing, email blasts, sequenced emails and the like, and I want to keep track of that and connect it to my CRM. HubSpot's excellent at that. Again, when you go from free to paid user, it's a big jump, and you're paying for a lot of marketing horsepower. If you're not going to do that marketing, then why bother? Those are sort of the three main ones out there. Microsoft Dynamics, I don't endorse that product at all. It's extremely, the user interface is poor. It's one of those, oh, once you get to know how to use it, you can use it. And these days, to me, the bar is a lot higher than that. It should be very intuitive, and it's not intuitive. If you're a Microsoft shop and you're really tied into all the Microsoft products, maybe it's something you could consider, but it's hard and expensive to modify. You need to hire somebody. Similarly with HubSpot, you need to hire somebody. Salesforce, absolutely, you need to hire someone to modify it. Zoho, you can modify on your own, or you could find a tech person on a per hour basis that if you know what you want to put in there, they can help you with. So shopping for CRM, it really depends upon your needs. How much do we want to use it for marketing purposes? Do we want to have project management? Or are we a sell it and then produce it type of company? Do we need that interface? Do we want something that interfaces with our accounting? Those are some questions you should be asking yourself. And then you can look at those options and pick the right one.
Very good. Okay, we'll keep the questions coming. We're going to jump over into what I know you're all looking forward to. We're going to look at a spreadsheet. But look, this is to answer a question that commonly comes up for us, which is, look, I'm forecasting sales. How does that relate to my revenue? Why doesn't that line up to my cash that's coming in? They're all sort of different but related concepts. So I'm going to do my very best attempt here to illustrate these concepts and how they fit together. And I will provide this spreadsheet here that I'm going to show as a tool for you after the fact. So here goes nothing. And please let me know that you can see my screen. So I'm, yes, you can see it? Okay. So the first screen that I want to share, and is this big enough, guys? I mean, I can zoom in if I need to. Should I zoom in? Yes? Or is this fine? Can I get a thumbs up? You can read it? So? Okay. I'll zoom in a little bit. All right. Oh, that's, I think, a little too big. Sorry. Okay. So like this is sales pipeline opportunities. So this is the kind of report that you should be able to get out of any decent CRM. So there'll be a deal card or opportunity listed here. So the company, the amount that you expect it to be, maybe there's a monthly recurring component of that, a predicted close date, and depending on the stage of the sales process that it's in, there's a probability of close that you assign, okay? Then the estimated amount or factored amount is a simple multiplication of 50% times the $25,000 value of the deal, right? And same goes for the monthly recurring. And let's say we take the monthly recurring and we multiply it by a number of months, then we can say, oh yes, this is the lifetime value of that monthly deal. Okay, so hopefully that's fairly intuitive. You should be able to get this kind of export out of any decent CRM. But then the question is, how does this relate to revenue? Is my sales not my revenue? What's the difference? So let's dig into that a little bit. We have to look at the close dates and the amounts and turn this into a sales forecast. So this is your pipeline report. Your sales forecast is the next tab over. And in this example, we're just taking those numbers that we had in the previous tab and we're mapping it out by months based on those expected close dates. Okay, so here's the non-recurring revenue. So in September, we're predicting 20,000. In October, we're predicting that we're going to close $50,000 worth factored value. And similarly for the the monthly recurring, what do we expect to get? So this is stretching it out month by month and summing up some of those things. Okay, hopefully you're with me so far. If you're not, send something in the chat. But then now we need to look at how does this relate to revenue. This is not your revenue forecast. This is different from your revenue forecast. This is a sales forecast. It's a different thing. we need to understand how this relates to our revenue. We need to put in some assumptions, and we need to figure out a starting point. So we'll go over there for a second. So let's say for our non-recurring revenue, we're going to say that half of it is earned in the first month and half of it is earned in the second month. Okay, so maybe there's a small onboarding project or something like that. So we're not going to say that we've earned that revenue all in the first month or all after the project is done or what have you. So we're going to make some assumption there. Okay, so the next thing is that we have to decide after we make a sale, well, when does the monthly recurring revenue start? Does that start the very next month? Does that start in the same month as you close the deal? Could be. And what was the monthly recurring revenue in the previous month? Well, I'm just putting in an assumption that it was 65,000. Okay. We've also got some numbers around monthly recurring revenue churn, and how does that relate to the average length of a subscription so that we can calculate that lifetime value. So there's all these things in here. And then we'll get into payment terms. That's a whole other kettle of fish, right? So you get paid sometime after you invoice maybe. So let's think about that. That'll come in later. Okay, so the next thing then is to take those assumptions and go, so up top here, this was our projected non-recurring revenue for sales for September. So then we're going to split that out. Remember I said we're going to count that we've earned 50% of that in the first month. Well, there that is 50. And then 50% is going to go into the next month. But we're also going to add 50% from October's total. So about 25K and change plus the 10K equals 35,000. Okay, so this is how, and so on through the months. So this is how revenue is forecasted out. And then the next thing to do is to look at the monthly recurring revenue. So you start with, well, what did MRR start at? It was $65,000. We're assuming that the new sales monthly recurring revenue starts in that same month because we're starting it right away. So we're going to add that $1,940 onto the 65, and we get up to 66,000. But every single month after that, we're increasing by the amount of the monthly recurring revenue that we're adding up. Okay, so that's how that is increasing on. And then we add those two numbers up and we get to a total revenue forecast. Okay, so so that's the difference between a sales forecast and a revenue forecast. So hopefully you're with me so far. The next layer on is the cash forecast. There's some companies that have monthly recurring revenue, but they collect the cash for that whole thing all up front. Somebody pays up front for the whole thing, but they don't earn that revenue all up front. They have to deliver the service throughout the year. So they spread the revenue across years. Let's take a look at the relationship between when our revenue is earned and when we receive the cash. In this simple example, I've said, well, monthly recurring revenue, we just get the cash as soon as we invoice it because we're taking a credit card payment, for instance, right away, and all of them are on monthly. I haven't modeled in this example annual subscription fees or anything like that, but you can see how this changes the picture. You would add another line. For the non-recurring revenue, the project revenue, my assumption was that we say we've earned the revenue in the month, 50% in the first month, 50% in the second month, but then it takes our client 30 days to pay. So now we have to shift that into the following month. So let's take a look at that. Here's our revenue forecast from the previous tab. We've got our $10,000 that we invoiced and recorded the revenue for, earned revenue, but the cash didn't come in until the following month. You can see the difference there. So these numbers are just date shifted 1 month over. The MRR assumption is that the cash is received in the following month, and it continues on. So now you can see the cash forecast. Okay, you can play with these variables all you want, but now you see the relationship between those things. I want to just show you in chart form how this plays out. So here's our, for non-recurring revenue, our expected close value, that's our sales forecast. Here's the revenue forecast, it's half of that amount. And there's no cash forecasted to be received. it is not uncommon for companies to sort of struggle with this and visualize this, how this all fits together. And it's a terrible situation to expect to get a certain amount of cash into the business and then it doesn't come. So it's really important to understand the relationship between these things and make sure that you model it out carefully in your financial forecasting. I will make this spreadsheet available to everyone after the call. And if you have questions about it and you're an Entreflow client, please feel free to reach out to your CFO or accountant, and they'll make sure and walk you through it. If you're not an Entreflow client, just give me a call and we can figure things out. I'll leave that there for the spreadsheet. Are there any questions on the spreadsheet before I stop sharing the screen here?
I have a comment here, Ian, that this was really, really helpful, even for what we do with Startup Vancouver, what I do with my business, the fact I do not have that background as an accountant. That's why as we grow, that we will be, of course, using the wonderful services that Entreflow has to offer. But the fact you put this out there for people is great. And I found this very, very helpful. You really distilled it down. You clarified that because there's so many moving parts. As an entrepreneur, most of us do not come from a business background or an accounting background, especially. That this was nice and clear. So yeah, good job on that. Well done.
Sounds good. Well, thanks very much. I'm glad I explained it clearly. And that's what we're here for, guys. So, you know, if you've got something that you want to cover on the next webinar, then just let us know. You know, I whipped up this spreadsheet in, you know, 30, 40 minutes. So last night as I was getting prepared for this. Loved the interaction on this stuff, guys. If you've got things that you want to cover, let us know. We will be doing another webinar, the dates to be announced, but you can expect it to be at the end of October on a Tuesday. We're thinking that the next conversation will be about mergers and acquisition type activity. Especially in a really weird year for finance and investment, how that's looking. And so we're thinking of doing that topic, but stay tuned for details. They'll be emailed out to you. And I'll pause here. And if there's any questions, please type them into the chat.
Ian, we did have one that came in earlier from Dave. That's in the Q&A box.
Okay. So Rob, you described a sequence of pipeline stages. It would be great to see that list written down. Oh, I think we did actually cover this one, Aislinn. So Rob agreed that he would provide that list. So Rob's going to email that to me, and then you and I will make sure that we put it up on the event page for after. We'll share the video, by the way, folks. So and we'll put it up on the same event page that you landed on to sign up for this. And we'll probably put up a social media post or something as well. So make sure that you're following us on our company page on LinkedIn. So just search for Entreflow Consulting Group on LinkedIn and we should come up. Make sure and like or follow that page. If Facebook's your bag, then follow us there. And we try and post these things so you can follow us through. I guess with that, Rob, would you mind just pasting your contact information into the chat or your LinkedIn so that people could contact you if they want to do that? All that remains to be said is thank you very much. Thank you for attending this session, for contributing your questions and your attention. And thanks very much to Rob. He's put his website details into the chat. So if you want to reach out to Rob, I highly recommend getting in touch, having a chat, and reading his book. He's got a really great book. It's very easy to read. And it's all about sales methodology and the kinds of things he's been talking about today. So feel free to get in touch with Rob. Thank you, Rob. Thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thanks very much for having me. And sincerely, if anyone has any questions, wants to spend a few minutes on the phone for a little bit deeper dive on anything I covered today or maybe something I didn't, please let me know. My email address is rob@robmalec.com. I'll type that in here. I'm happy to chat, happy to help out and pitch in.
Thank you very much. I hope everyone has a really great Tuesday. Bye for now.